The epic fury unleashed by Donald Trump on Iran is sending ripples across the globe. What consequences will it have for Europe and the war in Ukraine? To talk about it and more, we're joined by Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. Army Europe. Good evening, General.
Good evening, Maciej.
So Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has suggested, trading interceptor drones for Patriot PAC-3 missiles. Those are also interceptor missiles. Is this something the US and Arab countries, which cannot fully protect themselves from Iran's Shahed attacks, can agree to?
I think that nations are learning what the Ukrainians already knew about how to defend against the Shahed drones. I think that the idea of using a Patriot interceptor against something like that, of course, that's a wrong application of a capability and not one that any of us can afford. I think that we would be wise, all of the countries in the Gulf region would be wise to invite Ukraine to provide some technical expertise to come and teach how to do this more effectively.
Now let's talk about drones a little more. Ukrainian media claim that a Russian-made Heran drone was shot down over Dubai in the United Arab Emirates as part of the Iranian aerial assault. Now, what consequences would it have if indeed a modern Russian drone, if they were used in attacks on Arab states?
Well, you know, Russia and Iran have been allies or partners for quite some time. And so it would not surprise me that if Iran had Russian-made capabilities or were using them somehow, just like Chinese technology shows up a lot of times in Russian weapons. So I think the technologies that Iran is using, I mean, they're fighting for their survival. The IRGC is not interested in negotiating. They're only interested in outlasting the United States and Israel. So they're going to use everything they can to broaden the scope of this war, to drag in more countries, to make it too expensive and uncomfortable for the United States to continue.
The question is whether this sort of approach will work. But let's talk about Ukraine a bit more. Ukraine was able to destroy a Russian LNG carrier with naval drones sent from the Libyan coast. Now, what does it tell us about Kiev's capabilities? And should we expect more such attacks, especially now that energy prices are soaring due to the war in Iran?
I think that Ukraine knows that their path to victory runs through the destruction of Russia's oil and gas industry, the ability of Russia to export oil and gas to China and India and other customers. And so attacking refineries and now attacking ships, all of this is intended to wreck Russia's ability to get resources, revenue from their customers for Russian oil and gas. And it would be even more helpful if European countries would stop the Shadow Fleet vessels out in the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. That would bring an end to this even more quickly. So I'm not surprised that Ukraine has done this. What's impressive is how they continue to get better and better at long-range precision strike capability.
Well, there's more to it. Let's talk about the Russian Navy. The news of the attack on the LNG carrier comes on the heels of another attack, a Ukrainian drone strike, which reportedly damaged 5 Russian vessels in the Novorossiysk Black Sea base. Now, is Russia already losing the war on the sea? Well, not yet.
Yeah. The Ukrainians, of course, have rendered the great Russian Black Sea fleet almost inconsequential. And even though Ukraine does not have a navy in the traditional sense, they've done it with anti-ship missiles, with maritime drones, and flying unmanned aerial systems. So the Russians still, at this point in the war, still cannot defend themselves effectively from their port in Novorossiysk or at sea which is surprising that they still seem unable to do this. Now, again, Ukraine needs help to get to the scale to accomplish what it is they want to do. They've got the technology, but they don't have the capacity to make these kinds of capabilities in great quantity. And so this is where I think European companies, American companies, others could invest in helping Ukraine grow the size of this capability.
Now, talking about technology, there's more good news coming from Ukraine. Ukraine's commander-in-chief, General Syrski, claims that Kyiv was able to reclaim more territory last month than Russia actually captured in the same period. Now, this was mostly due to Starlink's shutdown for Russian troops. But is this a temporary setback for Russia or a major game changer already?
Well, look, the fact is, after 12 years, Russia still only controls 21% of Ukraine. They've gained almost nothing over the past year, despite hundreds of thousands of casualties. And this is without the United States providing meaningful support since President Trump became our president. So I think it's clear that Russia cannot defeat Ukraine. They cannot overrun Ukraine or break through Ukrainian defenses. They can only continue to kill innocent Ukrainian civilians in their apartments. So that, to me, is the biggest story, is that Russia clearly cannot defeat Ukraine. Now, I imagine that on the ground, the line is going to move back and forth occasionally. But I think in the great scheme of things, the war is moving in the wrong direction for Russia. And if Ukraine continues to be successful on going after Russia's oil and gas infrastructure, then I think I would agree with President Zelensky that it's we're at the beginning of the end.
Now, Ukraine is quite familiar with Russian drone attacks, and Ukraine knows perfectly well how to deal with them. Now, Iran has been able to send a Shahed drone to attack a British base in Cyprus. Now, is Europe prepared for this type of a strike, the Western Europe?
Absolutely not. We haven't, and I say we, I live in Frankfurt, Germany, but European allies have still not figured out how to impose consequences on the Russians for all of their gray zone operations. The drones flying through Polish airspace, German airspace, Denmark, other places. This is not about shooting down drones. This is about inflicting consequences on the Russians for what they're doing, as well as sabotage on railroads and infrastructure. In Germany last year alone, over 320 attacks on critical infrastructure. And then, of course, these Shadow Fleet vessels that are sailing out the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea past European, NATO, EU countries. If we can do that, if we got serious about that and started making the Russians feel some pain for what they're doing, then I think we would all be in a much better place. We are not prepared for an attack on the size, the scale of what Ukrainians deal with every night, or now what Gulf states are having to deal with, hundreds of drones and mixed in with missiles. We haven't practiced that. We haven't trained on that enough.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are some threats coming from Tehran. Namely, could Iran successfully attack Albania? Because it claims that this country is now a legitimate target for it.
Well, first of all, keep in mind that the real power in Iran was not the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, although, let me say it this way. Killing the supreme leader and the people around him was an important step, but notice that the attacks from the Iranian side came after that. All the hundreds of drones and missiles that they launched and hit targets all over the Gulf region came after the supreme leader was killed. So that tells me that there still is infrastructure or people in place to continue operations. So there is continuity of command. And it really shows me that Iran is not a theocracy but it's a military state built around the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, shrouded in theocracy. So it looks like a theocratic government. The IRGC is a very strong, resilient organization. And so I think the threats that we can expect to see, in addition to what we've already seen, will be Iranian-sponsored terrorist organizations or individuals or from a network somehow that could strike targets inside European countries. I don't anticipate a lot of this, but I would not discount that.
General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. Army Europe, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much, General.
Thank you, Maciej. Thank you.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews and news here on TVP World.